today they were talking about US's shot, and, you know, Mr. Reed has hit a lot of big shots for the Razorbacks, and he's one of the great players to ever play at the University of Arkansas. But he'll never hit one any bigger, and he never has hit one any bigger than the one he hit yesterday against Louisville. It was a situation where it was, I think I best described it, he threw up a prayer and it was answered, and believe me, let's take a look at it right here. That was pure. That's what they call a netter. No rim, no board, just cord.
Just cord. We'll see more of that later, too.
Yeah, we're going to take a look at that several times in the show today, but, you know, I don't believe that I've ever seen our fans so excited about one game as that ball game yesterday, Paul. You know, we look at some of the great wins that we've had here at the University of Arkansas, and I always go back to the UCLA win, but Notre Dame in the Final Four, but some of the games over Texas. But I guess it was the way it happened. It was something like, you know, we had the game, then it looked like we were going to lose it, then all of a sudden we had it again. And my oldest son best described it. He said, Dad, he said, you know, that's like going from the pits to the mountaintops in an instant. He said, you know, all of a sudden it's agony and then it's ecstasy, and I think that describes it well. But the reason I say the fans were so excited, last night when we arrived back in Fayetteville, of course this is spring break and none of our students are around, we had about 300 people out there to meet us, and I've never seen a group of adult people so excited. And today when I arrived here in Little Rock and walked down the terminal, everyone, that's all talk was about that game. It was the greatest game they'd ever seen. And I think the way it was won, you know, the emotion, it looked like that we were in control of the basketball game with a couple of minutes to go. We made some mistakes, missed some free throws, and I felt like we got some bad calls down the stretch. And then when they hit that shot and there's only 5 seconds to go, the percentage is really against you at that point, Paul, but yet we pulled it out, and it was a great win and allows us to go to the regional tournament. And when all the games are over today, there will only be 16 teams left fighting for a national crown.
And, Coach, some of those teams are surprises. A lot happened over the weekend already.
Well, a lot of the seeded teams were beaten, and we've said this all season long. There's very little difference between some of those top teams and some of the teams that maybe are 48th or 60th in the country, and it just depends on how well you play that particular day. For instance, yesterday, there's no one in college basketball, in my opinion, could have beaten LSU. They were awesome in beating Lamar, but they're not going to play like that every day, and we'll hope that we catch them on an off night when we play them next Friday night in the Dome. The only thing that I wish the game could be played someplace else, because they're liable to have about 35,000 people down there cheering for them. You know, the way that is set up, and that's where the national championship will be next year, they can actually seat 60,000 people for a basketball game, so it's very possible that they might break the record. I think the record's like 50,000 when UCLA played Houston many years ago in the Astrodome.
Coach has a lot planned for you, so stay tuned. We'll rejoin Eddie Sutton in just a moment.
The thing that makes basketball such a great sport is that you don't have to have a big enrollment, a big school to play with the big boys, and a lot of small schools that don't even have football have some of the best basketball teams in the country. And we've seen a lot of upsets in the NCAA, and I think the thing that makes the NCAA tournament such a great thing is the building. It starts last week with first-round ball games. Next week we go into the regionals, and then it all ends in Philadelphia this year in the Final Four, and it's just a building process, and it's a great sporting event. It isn't just a one-game situation. It's an entire tournament. And let's take a look at the tournament bracket and the teams that are left, and mention some of the upsets that have happened this week. Of course, the Midwest region will be in New Orleans. Wichita State this afternoon upset Iowa, and so they move into New Orleans. Arizona State was trailing Kansas by 10 points when we recorded this show earlier today, so you may have seen another ball club fall by the wayside in the Mideast. And that tournament will be held in Bloomington. I want you to remember, last week I said Indiana is the team that I'm picking, and Indiana gets to go back home. They routed Maryland yesterday by 25. Kentucky was upset this afternoon by the University of Alabama at Birmingham. St. Joe's, of course, upset DePaul, and Wake Forest, that game is being played this afternoon, and so those three teams, Alabama, Birmingham, Indiana, St. Joe, have already moved into the regional tournament in Bloomington. Then we go to the West, and Kansas State defeated San Francisco. Then they beat Oregon State yesterday on a last-second shot by Blackman. Illinois won, so those two teams advanced to Salt Lake City. Utah is playing this afternoon, as is North Carolina. So that'll be a great regional. And then, of course, in the East, Virginia won this afternoon 54-50 over Villanova, a team that had beaten Houston earlier in the week. So they advanced to Atlanta, Georgia, where the Eastern Regional will be held. Notre Dame and BYU both won yesterday. BYU trounced the Bruins of UCLA. And the other ball game, of course, being played later this afternoon. I'm sure by the time the fans see this show tonight, that entire bracket will have been shown on the sports show by Ray Tucker.
You know what, it just struck me as you were going over those pairings that out of the Great Alaskan Shootout, Arkansas, LSU, North Carolina probably still in the NCAA, Coach.
Well, that was a great tournament. You know, we said at the time there were some outstanding ball clubs, and Missouri was up there, and of course Pat Foster's team played an outstanding ball game tonight against Missouri. We're going to have some highlights of that ball game later in the show.
Coach Mercer, one of the ball clubs that you talked about not having a football program, but a gritty club.
Well, Bill Bibbs did a great job as ball club, and a very fighting ball club, very competitive, and they gave us all we wanted. We made it hard on ourselves. We ended up winning by 6, but we had 19 out of 40 free throws. The worst free throw shooting performance that I've ever had a ball club having a ball game. And had we hit any kind of free throws, we would have won the ball game by 20. But we didn't do that. Fortunately, yesterday against Louisville, we hit 24 out of 30, and that was one of the real factors in our win. So let's take a look. We pick up the action in the Mercer game late in the ball game. In fact, I think there's about 3 minutes to go. And at this point, the game is very, very close. Of course, Mercer's in the red.
You like this guard, Talbot.
Talbot is a good player. He's a great point guard. He's really the heart of their ball club. He ended up, I think, high point man in the ball game with 22 points. You can see they played zone, and we did not have a good shooting game against Mercer from the field, and we didn't have a great shooting performance yesterday. Both games below 50%, and when that happens, you have to be doing some things right, and in both these ball games, we did a good job on the boards. Out-rebounded both ball clubs, and there's Darrell Walker hitting a twisting jumper, and that's one of the 3 free throws he hit. Darrell Walker was 3 out of 13. I have never seen anyone shoot that poorly at the line, and of course, on the day between the games where we got Darrell out there and worked with him, and yesterday he shot his free throws much better.
You made the statement that he possibly could have had, what, 34, 36
He scored
points.
19 points, but if he'd hit all his free throws, he could have had 34 points in that ball game. Of course, you can see we're trying to spread them out, and they don't want to come out of that zone. They want to stay in there. But we got good shots in this ball game, but going back to what I said earlier, we rebounded well, and our defense was very good in both ball games, and because of that, we were able to beat both Mercer and Louisville when we really didn't have the great shooting night. Sometimes if you're having a great shooting night, you can fall short in some of the other areas of the game and get by with it. 64-59 with 1:55 to go in the game, and Tony Brown goes to the line. And fortunately, we hit the free throws down the stretch when we really had to have them, and 66-59. Talbot's going to come right back here and hit a jumper, almost a steal. You see, we've gone to zone defense this late in the ball game. Very fortunate they missed a shot there. There's Talbot hitting about a 17, 18-footer on the right side. U.S. Reed with the basketball. They finally come out of their zone, winner 5 game. Scott Hastings off to Keith Peterson, and they're whistled for a foul.
I'd almost forgotten in all the conversation over the missed free throws that you did make them when you really had
well,
to.
Pete hit 2 down the stretch. Tony hit 2. Now the score again is 68-61, and we're right at a minute to go in the ball game. But they don't give up. They come right back, and Thompson hits one from the right side for about 20 feet. It's Tony Brown driving through. He missed free throw there. He hit the first one, missed the second one. 69-63 with 39 seconds to go.
You know, that Reed with a great tap-in, Coach. That was a big shot in that game.
Yeah, it was. Darrell and U.S. played in both the games like they did in December. U.S. has been very consistent all season, but Darrell certainly has not. We'll talk more about Darrell later in the show. Good job of breaking the press. Tony Brown off the U.S. read. He puts it up 73-65. We let Talbot come down, and that's the final shot. 73-67, and that allowed us to get ready to play Louisville on Saturday.
Coach, you mentioned that Tony Brown had one of his better ball games against Mercer.
Tony Brown was unbelievable in that ball game, Paul. If you look at his statistics here, he had 4 out of 6 from the field, 4 out of 5 at the line. That's 12 points, 9 rebounds, only had 1 turnover, and he was quarterbacking the ball club, and 10 assists, which is an all-time high for the season for anyone to have. But an outstanding ball game. And then yesterday, when we played Louisville, he got in foul trouble early. He ended up going back in the ball game and only played 13 minutes and had 5 fouls. But in the Mercer game, in my opinion, the best game of the year for Tony.
He had some comments following at the press conference, and so let's take a look and see what Tony had to say in response to the ball game against the Bears.
And, certainly one of the best performances he's had this year.
Had a lot of assists too, Tony. You did the first half, I know.
No, the first half, I was just mainly, passing around the perimeter, and I wasn't really looking on the inside. The second half, I saw the opening and Hastings and some of the smaller guys were flashing in, and I got a chance to get him the ball.
I guess he did. I didn't see that. He got 10 assists, which is a high for us this year. We had 15, so we had 2/3 of them. That's a great performance.
Coach, those press conferences draw a crowd, don't they?
Yes, they do. When you get the NCAA, you just cannot imagine how many people from the media are present. In that first ball game, I was disappointed in the crowd in Austin, Paul. I think they had 6,500 the first night and 8,000 yesterday, which is very disappointing because some of the teams brought fans. And I made this comment: if we ever are fortunate to have an NCAA playoff series here in Little Rock, if we ever get a nice arena to play in, then I believe that we could draw 10, 12,000, just Arkansans that would come just to see good college basketball. And we had hoped that all the Texas fans would be for us, but against Mercer, I've been to the Drum a lot of times, and they don't ever treat us, with the respect that I think we deserve. But it was rough. I tell you, they got personal with our pom-pom squad, with our cheerleaders, with our players. We had some people behind our bench, and it was really bad. But then yesterday, it seemed like many of the Texas fans swung in our favor, and as the game wore on against Louisville, other than the Louisville fans, I think we had most of the people in attendance rooting for the Razorbacks.
Yeah, I thought the response was a little better yesterday.
Maybe they heard what I said in the press conference about them after the Mercer game.
We'll come back to take a look at some Lamar, Missouri highlights and a big win for former Arkansas assistant Pat Foster in just a moment.
Pat Foster was my assistant for 6 years, Paul, and certainly helped to build the great basketball tradition that we have at Arkansas at the present time. And I was elated last year when he was able to get the Lamar job. He came in second on a lot of jobs the last 2 or 3 years. And, of course, he just did an outstanding job with his ball club this year. They finished 25-5 with their loss yesterday to LSU. And they had been beaten by over 20 points earlier in the year by Missouri. So I know the win over Missouri was very satisfying. And he had a terrific basketball team. I tell you, if LSU hadn't played so well yesterday, I thought he had a chance to beat LSU. I'd heard so much about B.B. Davis and Mike Oliver, but they got a little guy by the name of Brooks, a guard, who is just as quick as anyone I've ever seen. And they ran the 4 corners against Missouri as well as anyone I've seen run the 4 corners since the days at North Carolina when they had Phil Ford. Now, when I say 4 corners, that's a different kind of control game than we run. We call our 5 game.
Taxes down to 0, and then they can sell those tax breaks to other profitable corporations. And I think that's absolutely wrong. And I told the president in my letter, I certainly can't be for taxes on gasoline or telephone bills or things that the average American has to pay until we close these loopholes on people who can afford to pay those taxes.
Boren will continue his tour of northeastern Oklahoma, visiting Tahlequah and surrounding communities before returning to Washington this weekend.
Bill's
Number 10, Brooks has the basketball. And of course, the idea of 4 corners is just to get the ball in the hands of your best free throw shooters, your best dribblers, and get everybody else out of the way and give those guys a lot of room to maneuver. And there's Mike Oliver going in there. And you can see Pat Foster come off the bench. He was very calm throughout the ball game until that happened, and that really was the icing on the cake and allowed them to go on and win. I think the final score was like 73-67. And right after this ball game, I think you had an opportunity to visit with Pat, so let's take a look at what he had to say.
Well, I think so. I think obviously we did a much better job rebounding than we did the last time we played them, and I think our people inside did a good job against the big people from Missouri. Yeah, I think that was one of the big factors in the game.
Eddie was able to stay out the first half by 11 minutes in foul trouble. What happened during that time that you were able to extend the lead when he was out?
Well, it's happened so many times when someone goes in off the bench in a ball game like this, they'll usually rise to the occasion, and I thought Larry Stevenson went in and played very well there for a stretch, defensively and rebounds. He got a three-point play. Mike Wallace played well during that stretch, and I think our guards really took over the game a little bit more during that period of time. I think everybody just kind of hitched up their belt a little bit and played maybe a little harder than they would if BB had been in there, and this happens sometimes.
Great season for Pat, and one of my other assistants that did a lot for our basketball program, Gene Cady, just barely missed getting in the NCAA. His team finished 4th in the Big Ten, and they're playing in the NIT. They won their first game, and they'll be playing tomorrow night.
Coach, you got, you know, a lot going on revolving around you.
I'm always proud of those guys that have been here and go on and do well, and we always knew that Pat and Gene would be outstanding college coaches.
The highlights of yesterday's big victory begin
at 1, defensive board play. They're a strong, aggressive, rebounding basketball team, and we ended up beating them on the boards, and that was a major key. We felt like we had to be able to handle their full court pressure in their presses, and we did to a certain degree, but we ended up having a lot of turnovers. But I want to say this, that both teams played great defense. Louisville just played outstanding, not only the full court defense, but their half court defense was sound. And our team played well defensively. And let's pick up the action. This is right at the early part of the ball game, and we'll take some of the highlights of the first half. For one of the first times in a long while, we got the tip. Darrell Walker was able to control the tip. You can see Louisville is in a very tight, switching man-to-man defense, and Darrell Walker goes inside, picks up the first basket of the ball game. Every time you go to screen off the ball, you'll see they'll switch. There's the U.S. Reed shooting one from the top of the circle. We fouled in between there, and the score right at this point is 4-1. Tony Brown off to Scott Hastings. Great follow shot. Darrell's second basket of the game. I think Darrell had 3 or 4 dunks during this first half, and at that point, that tied the score at 12-12. Here he goes inside again and dunks over him, and he put on a show. We talked about LSU being awesome yesterday. Well, in the first half, he was awesome. He had 19 out of our 37 points, and you can see getting inside position, going back up, and slamming it home again. Good steal by U.S. Nice move. Let the guy run by him and then brought the ball back, tucked it in, sailed in for an easy basket. That tied the game at 25. There's Eves missing about a 20-footer. Good pass by U.S. Nice shot by Mike Young. 27-25, and we're in the last 5 minutes of the first half.
Eddie, a lot happened in the zone.
Good follow shot by Darrell. You can see they're putting on a half-court press. Mike Young with the basketball. Darrell Walker. Kerry Kelly's in the ballgame, number 45. Hastings and Tony Brown are both on the bench at this point. Scott only had 2 points in the first half. Darrell Walker, good pass to Mike Young. And Mike probably uses the board about as well as anyone we have when he's got the what we call the angle of the board shot. We're trying to spread them out here just before halftime. And there's number 20, Darrell Walker again hitting the basket.
2 of his 19 first half points.
So we got into halftime 37-33, and having Scott over on the bench next to me along with Tony, I felt great about how well we had played. And as I said, Darryl really carried us during that first half. In the second half, some of the other players picked up the slack. I say Darryl, US made some big plays, and so did Mike Young.
Thing that was exciting in the ball game, you talked about defense. You used pressure, full court defense, good half court man-to-man, then went to the zone, what, primarily because of the foul situation?
Well, we went to the zone in the second half. Well, we went to it in the first half, mainly because the way the game was being called. We were getting people in foul trouble. It looked like we were going to get more people in foul trouble. And of course, when you play zone, you should foul less than when you're playing man defense. And we had heard from a lot of different people that Louisville just did not play as well against a zone. But our best defense normally is man-to-man. But in the second half, we had to stay in the zone. And the thing you give up when you're in a zone, in my opinion, you can't block off the defensive boards quite as well. And in the second half, we gave up 8 offensive rebounds to Louisville, whereas in the first half, we only gave up 1.
We'll be back to rejoin Coach and look at the second half of the Arkansas-Louisville game in just a moment.
At the beginning of the second half, and you'll see U.S. Reed retrieve one of the long rebounds. Great pass to Tony Brown and a gigantic slam dunk. We had several outstanding dunks in the ball game. Good lead pass to Scott Hastings. He misses. Good effort on the boards. Scott Hastings goes back up and puts the ball in the basket. And right after the half, I thought we were going to break out on them. We got out on 8 points, but we let them come right back in the ball game. And there's Keith Peterson hitting the shot, and we jumping long here. It's 52-50 at that point with 12:40 to go in the ball game. We elected here to slow it down a little bit and go to the 5 game. We felt like we could cut by them and get easier shots, and we did. Instead of being in what we call dead control, which means you don't shoot anything except layups, we were willing to take the 10, 12-foot jump shot, and Mike Young hit that basket to put us up 56-52. And now you can see that we've jumped again, and it's 56-56. Keith Peterson hits a big free throw for us. Yesterday, as I mentioned, we hit 24 out of 30. Great offensive rebound by Scott Hastings. That makes it 59-56. 24 out of 30 from the line, 25 out of 52, 48% from the field. That's a beautiful fast break, 2-on-1 break, and ball was given to U.S. at the right time. Almost a steal, but they got part of U.S.'s wrist on that play. Soft touch, 68-62. At this point, I felt like we were in great shape. I thought we're going to win this game by 10, 12 points.
The last 2 minutes must have lasted 30, Eddie.
It seemed like it lasted a lifetime. But you can see we're in a zone. There's Poncho Wright shooting an air ball, and Bergman goes back inside, and we have to foul him to keep him from getting the easy basket. He's our best free throw shooter. I think he was hitting right at 90% on the season, and he's the only senior on the Louisville Ball Club, so they'll be back again. But defending national champions don't die easily, and certainly right here, Pete gets fouled about 3 times, and they don't make a call, and they come right back, and then he gets whistled for a foul. And you can see I'm a little upset walking up and down there, and that was the Louisville announcing crew. And right next to them was Dave Hart, who's on the tournament committee, Dave Kaywood, former SID here at Arkansas, and they were in charge of running the tournament. And I was over there telling them that, hey, just because these guys are national champions, I mean they get the benefit of the officiating. But as you mentioned, that last 2 minutes seemed like it never was going to get over. We were slow getting back, and they missed the initial shot, but they were able to tip the ball in. And it's 71-67 with 2 minutes and 4 seconds to go. They're pressing. That's the pass that Mike made to Scott that time, and late in the ball game with 13 seconds to go, he threw the ball over Scott's head. Had it been just a couple of feet shorter, Scott could have caught the ball and laid it in for a layup, which would have certainly wouldn't have had to depend on that prayer shot to win the ball game for us. We're in what we call just a straight passing game, only we're in dead control here. We're not going to shoot anything except a real good shot. There's an unbelievable call. Mike got his arm ripped off, and they end up calling double dribble. We're in the zone. Bergman, the basketball. They try to go inside. Bad pass. Now watch right here. U.S. starts to dribble up the floor. I guess that's not the play. It's a little later here. It's Mike Young again. Mike thought he got hit on the arm that time, but he was careless with the ball. He shouldn't have dribbled the ball in the crowd. It's Eves driving to the basket. Pete goes strong for the, there's a little contact there. Right there, US gets fouled twice, and what's this? Bobby Dibler comes in. Oh, and you talk about, you
little reaction
see the coach
there.
right there. Got a little upset, but he called a foul on Mike Young. And I'm not being critical of officials. I tell you, these three guys are good officials, and overall they did a good job. But sometimes officials, and hey, I've seen officials do the same thing for us. They get caught up in the rally of the team that's behind. Right here, we're fighting for our lives. 2 points up. Keith Peterson with the basketball, and they call a foul. Bergman tries to strip the ball loose. It's one of the few free throws we missed. And they call Bergman, and that's his 5th foul going up. Look at number 4 there. He's trying to distract US, which is a technical foul, and you can see the official coming over to tell him not to be waving his hands up there in front of the free throw shooter. Louisville for the ball game shot 53% and 70% at the line. We beat them 34-29 on the boards. US misses that free throw. They get the ball forward quickly, and we're in the 2-on-2 zone. We want, at this stage of the game, you want to make the team shoot the ball from out on the perimeter. You don't want to let the ball get inside, and the one thing you certainly don't want to happen is to give up a 3-point play. And they set a double screen right here. You can see an illegal screen, but they set a double screen, and Poncho Wright came down the baseline. He hits about a 20-footer, and there's the disastrous pass. Scott just can't quite catch up to it. And so that means they get the ball out of bounds with 13 seconds to go. And I want you to see this shot. I want you to see US Reed here. Now watch. Watch this guy come in, knock US clear to the floor to get the rebound. And, of course, no call. And at that point, I was beside myself. But and you can see Louisville thinks they have won the ball game. And last year when they won the national title, they won 2 overtime games. One against Kansas State by 1 point, and one against Texas A&M. And when you get in national playoffs, you need to have some luck. And here it is again, folks. We got the ball in bounds. Watch this.
Oh, man, isn't that something?
That's as big a shot as I guess any Razorbacks ever hit. And we're going to take another look at it here in just a little bit. But the game itself, I felt like we were such good control, and all of a sudden it looked like we were going to lose. And somebody asked me, what did you tell them on the timeout? Well, with 5 seconds to go, and they're going to be in a zone press. We knew they were going to be in a 2-2-1, try to let the ball get in bounds and just try to make us eat up time. You have a choice. You can either throw the ball long, or you can do what we did. Get the ball to Reed and say, US, get the ball up the floor and get a shot off. And I don't know how many times he could hit that shot under those conditions, but let's take another look at it. It was a beautiful shot. I think this is courtesy of NBC, Paul, but this is a little different angle on the shot. And you can see he puts it up there, but it's a netter. It doesn't hit anything but the bottom of the basket. And Bedlam broke loose. And look at this. This is another angle. That thing is dead on line. You just don't know whether it's going to be long enough.
Golly.
And as soon as that ball went through that net, that floor was covered with humanity. And, of course, this is the shot we showed earlier in the show that the people here at Channel 7 shot.
His release is like a regular shot until the follow-through, Coach. He really does get good.
And one thing they did, the official made a great play. As soon as he shot the ball, he signaled it would be good if it went in the basket, and that's a mark of a good official. And I was worried. I thought US was at the bottom of this pile, and I got out there, and US was smart enough. He was running around the side of the court shaking hands with some of the people in the media and some of his teammates, and Hastings had gone out there and jumped on Walker and Jimmy Counts and taken both of them to the floor like a takedown in wrestling. And then, of course, all the photographers came up, and I was having to pull humanity away from them. I was afraid they were going to get smothered. But that's the way it was in the dressing room, complete bedlam. Our ball club, many times, Paul, it hasn't been that emotional. We won so many big basketball games the last 4 years, but they were excited yesterday, and I know the fans across the state were just as excited.
Coach, I know that U.S. did the smart thing after making it, too. He visited with the press and stayed out of all that melee.
I think he was talking to Ish Haley, who used to live in Fayetteville and works for one of the Dallas newspapers, but he was running up and down the sidelines, and let's take a look at some of that.
Coach just told the team to get the ball in my hands. And we did it once before last year against University of Texas in Fayetteville. So I just brought the ball up court. I was really shocked when I saw Louisville standing there at mid-court, because I thought it was going to go down court at half court to set up in the zone. But I managed to maneuver, and I saw a punch standing there. And I knew they weren't going to foul him because we were in 1-and-1. So I just kind of like pushed out and I just followed through and win. And Lord, that's my prayer. Give him glory to God.
You knew it was going in, though, when you shot it, didn't you?
I knew I had a good release on the ball, and it felt good, but I didn't really know it was going in. Really did.
I think everybody there tried to get him to admit that he knew it was going in when he released it.
Well, he excited everyone, and I tell you, the one that he excited most was his mother. She was there at the game, and I visited with her after the ball game, and she was a mighty proud lady, and she should be, because U.S. is an outstanding basketball player, but he's a great guy, too.
We'll continue with Coach Eddie Sutton in just a moment.
All of our spirit groups were present in Austin, and after the game was over, right out where you come out of the tunnel or out of the arena, Jim Robkin had his band, and all of the fans that were there had just formed really a tunnel for the team to come out, and it was very, very exciting. And there's a guy that I didn't think we'd ever get on tape doing this, but he made his appearance right after we had left, and fortunately